Welcome to the Ascension Stargate Podcast Series, where we discuss the aspects of human consciousness, spirituality, metaphysics and philosophy, energy, extraterrestrial life, science, biology, and the alchemy of higher states of beingness, all from a heart-centered perspective. I am your host and guide, Glenn Mate, and let's begin our journey.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Ascension Stargate Podcast Series. I have an amazing guest today. His name is Ron Holman, and we call him SiddaRon Holman. And Dr. Ron builds bridges between the traditional corporate healthcare communities. He owns and operates an HMO in California. Dr. Ron is also an ambassador of Siddha Alchemy. And he traveled the world since about 1995, and SiddaRon sought the secret to spontaneous remission of disease. Very important. During his heartfelt quest, he received knowledge and experience receiving healing and energy transmissions beyond words to describe. He's connected to immortal yogis in South India who have given him many of their alchemical secrets to him. SiddaRon's alchemy creates potential energetic oils infused with divine loving frequencies that make it possible for others to experience and receive the loving blessings of the Siddhas without having physically traveled to these ancient sites. So I welcome SiddaRon, a friend of mine, just a wonderful and loving and generous human being. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I love it when you are emanating so much love and light. Glenn. It's such a joy to share that experience with you. It is my joy to participate, to tell my story, and how, I got lost in the 60s very, very, very badly. And at 29, I really started to surrender and to seek a spiritual solution to what appeared to me to be a hopeless and helpless state of body and mind and spirit. And through that process, I came to believe in a power greater than myself. And I discovered that that meant that my mind and my ego was not of any use to me to find a path that was certainly a whole lot more happier and pain-free than I was living. And I went back to school and I finished my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in psychology, and I started marketing employee assistance programs to major corporations. And I had a tremendous insight to the corporate benefit plan design and how they really spent a lot of money and accomplished very, very little. Mm-hmm. And, I figured out pretty quickly that if I showed them how to get better results, and probably the key was spend less money and to retain employees rather than having to fire them and rehire and retrain, that seemed to be appealing. So I started doing that, and I started going to AA meetings, and I started discovering how my mind and my emotional states caused me to suffer. And I decided that suffering was overrated.
Oh boy! Now, isn't that a statement that we all can heartfelt agree with? That in any context, that suffering is certainly overrated.
That really is, and it all goes back to childhood perceptions of circumstances and meaning that I gave to circumstances in childhood that started creating beliefs and that became habituated unconscious programs about how to be safe, how to get ahead, how to succeed. My parents greatly highlighted the need to be successful. And they just didn't know that once you arrive on this planet as a child, you already are successful. I mean, that's just a fact. And I finally discovered that, as I started doing deeper self-inquiry, and got married, had a child, and my first wife in 1986 was diagnosed with stage 4 cirrhosis of the liver, hepatitis C, and the best doctors on liver disorders in the world at UCLA sent her home with a death sentence of maybe you have 6 months to live. So I love Linda. I still love Linda. And she looked at me with the most loving brown eyes. And she said, "Why don't you look outside the box?" And I said, "What box?" And I said, "Are you talking about the woo-woo stuff?" And she said, "What do we have to lose? Just use your get up and go and make things happen and go find something that'll help me." So I did. I turned over so many rocks and I kissed so many frogs and I was ripped off. Sold a bill of goods by people posing to be light workers. Others that were actually black magicians posing as light workers. And I kept love is what really moved me. Every instance, every circumstance, every person, I found within myself why I bought into what they had to say. And every single step taught me something. Eventually, I started having very profound experiences. I went to India for the first time in 1995, and on the corner of Moore Park and Vineland in North Hollywood at a stoplight, I heard the voice. And there was a filthy-looking, raggedy street lady walking across the crosswalk, and the voice said, "Offer her some money." So anytime I hear the voice, I do what it says. And I offered her some money. She was about 20 feet from me. I had a $10 bill in my hand. Her eyes came a laser beam of light that dissolved the $10 bill in my hand. I experienced the most profound joy I had ever felt. I just started bawling. All I could say is, "God bless you. God bless you." And then she turned completely into light. Me and my car turned into light. Next thing I know, teleported down the freeway, crying for the next week. Then I went to India, and it just rolled from there. And I just kept having the most profound experiences. And, I'll just tell you this, Linda lived 29 and a half years longer. She died in 2015. She had a very, very full life. And the last thing she said to me, she was going in for a liver transplant finally. She looked at me and she said, "Thank you for your support." And it was just incredible. I'm just so grateful. And I've come to understand that everybody I have ever loved, I still love. I have no regrets. Certainly better to have loved and lost, however that loss happens, than not to have loved at all. Glenn, love is the creative essence of life, of God, of the universe, of everything. And I have seen that save my life on many, many occasions. The love that I have for God, for myself. I mean, let's face it, most of us raised Christian in the West. I was taught that I was made in the image and likeness of God. Well, what happened? You know,
Ron, you're just getting started.
yeah, where's the beef? You know. So, Jesus said, "What I can do, you will do, and more." So here we are, and certainly the mind and the ego is always trying to hijack credit. Always. And when I got to India the first time, I went there to learn how to walk on water.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read Patanjali's, and I went, oh, better just kind of cool my jets and trust that if I'm supposed to have spiritual magical powers, they'll come when I'm supposed to have them. And I best not seek to have these to control. Most of those, gurus that do that are really doing it to impress people, to gather a following, to get money, to get laid, whatever it is. And, this is what some people do. And I think that everybody has to experience what they have to experience in order to learn what is in those experiences to learn. And I wouldn't condemn anybody for anything. And I know that all is one. So I proceed in looking at people, as myself, as best I can. Especially when I'm driving on the freeway or in LA traffic.
Yes. And, there are just so many opportunities within everybody that we meet to experience the reflection of who we are through another person by the information that they're giving to us. It's really more to do with about us than it is to do about them. And when we realize that everything is a reflection, we then can contemplate what is going on inside with me that I either prefer or don't prefer. And that provides the opportunity for enlightenment of change. That is the awakening of our consciousness to say, I like to do this because this brings me joy and love, or when I look at things this way, it brings me sadness, depression, anger, frustration. Yet, we as a human species have been labeling things in a way that has always this polarized effect on it. But it seems to be that you've taken that polarized effect and just created an experience that is always bringing you knowledge and wisdom, no matter what that experience is. So you've dissolved that paradigm of having to label a positive experience or a negative experience.
Well, that's the goal. And certainly everybody has a piece. I really, really believe that. And being vulnerable is one of my real superpowers. And it's so interesting that some of my most dearest friends and masters in their own right have viewed my vulnerability as a weakness. So what is vulnerability? Vulnerability is to be transparent in the present moment with whoever you're with. Right. And I find that when I speak the truth, it is enlivening for me. And I know from, I've been in AA 48 years, and when I share, things come out of my mouth that I've never heard before. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So as we do that, as we share the present truth, it liberates us and it provides others with let's just say, a snapshot picture of, it's an opportunity. So many people are judging themselves based upon, I guess, how they view others. And, if they're more or less, or if they're smarter or want something, or if they have and the other has more, or all of that sort of stuff, which is sort of what goes on in this place, of duality. And that's just, I grew up that way. So it's very, very interesting to experience that with loving compassion.
Yes.
And probably the most powerful example of that was in a cave in the northernmost Indian state of Sikkim. And I went into a cave where Padmasambhava sat for a very, very long time in the presence of a demon called Rahula. And Padmasambhava went in there to do nothing. He sat in loving compassion. And Rahula emanated incredible foul odors and ate human flesh in front of him. And all of this shit went on. And Padmasambhava sat in loving compassion that made Rahula so upset that he got on his knees and requested the teachings. And Padmasambhava did nothing.
Right.
Rahula became a blessed Dharma protector. So my dear friend Dennis Adams explains judgment in terms of, like, we look at the wars and everything going on and this and that, and he asked the question, in different galaxies in creation, planets crash into each other occasionally and completely destroy themselves. Is that good or bad? It's a happening.
Right. It's an occurrence.
It's an occurrence, and that's what it is. Now, if I see a child running out in the street, I'm going to pick up that child and bring it back. But to get involved in all of the struggles that so many people on this planet participate in and then witness it and have judgments about it, to some degree feeds that fire.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
People ask me about the election. How'd I feel? And playfully I said, there was an election?
Right. One of the things that I find is really important is that we can acknowledge that certain things are taking place on the planet that may not be in alignment with who we are. That doesn't stop us from being the best version of ourselves or condemning that, those practices are bad. Because when we focus our attention to that and we get drawn into the dramatic story outplaying of that, we begin to feed our energy, because where we place our attention is where we place our energy. So
Right.
We can live from the frequency of our heart, from love and compassion and understanding and patience and tolerance, which is not anything to do with judgment or feeding the narrative of whatever story that we may deem negative or unpreferable that's going on wherever it may be in the world. And it could be any subject matter. It could be any topic. It doesn't necessarily have to be political. It could be environmental. It could be something that might have to do with the flora and fauna of the planet, or just the way humans react and respond and treat each other. We can always live in that center of love. That doesn't mean that we're living in an isolated bubble, but it means that we are continuing to keep our intention on a path that is of our preference and that it is of that frequency of love. And, this is, I believe, where we are starting to go. We're starting to shed. And the more that we go into this harmony of the frequency of love, that those latter things that we may deem negative or disruptive will start to dissipate. because the energy is not being fed into it all the time. And it's all about that cultivation of that love frequency.
It really is. And understanding that, in the 20s, when I participated in all of those nefarious activities and drugs and whatever, I had to go through that in order to get to where I got to at 29. And when I look back on it, I have a profound understanding that, one, God don't make junk, and two, that there is a path into the light from wherever you are. And I believe that from the depth of my soul. And, when I sit with people, I'm a licensed psychotherapist also, that's what I transmit to them. And I'll just say that, in my travels to India, I've been there 20 times. I've sat with yogis that are documented by the government at 230 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my dearest friends is Mahananda Siddha, who hasn't eaten, slept, or drank any liquid for the last 22 years. And Lord Shiva appeared to him in physical form and told him he would live 500 years.
Mm.
And the capabilities that we possess in our sleeping DNA, there's lots of ways to awaken it. And one of the things that's happened to me in India is that I have been, let's just say, saturated with Siddha frequencies that has allowed me to bring back some of the alchemy from the ancient Siddhas. And that's what's on my website, A New Alchemy. And the frequencies in all of the oils and all the products don't give you anything that you don't already have. Mm-hmm. It simply ignites that frequency that's in you. And there's a written energetic description of each product. And here's the real key that I was taught by the Mahasiddha Boganathar, who was known as Lao Tzu in China, mm-hmm. is that the space between the words is where the juice is.
Isn't that so true? Isn't that true?
It really, really is. And the frequencies in the oil can affect different people in different ways. It ignites what is there to be ignited, what is there that's ready to be ignited, and what is, let's just say, part of your life purpose to have from, spiritual abilities, psychic abilities. There's a super group called Awaken More Money Making. There's all sorts of different frequencies in the oils. And then, of course, the Oramus that a lot of people really like. And, I discovered something about the collection of Oramus that, I'm just going to say that if it's only washed 4 or 5 times, it still has lye and salt in it. And so many people that collect Oramus don't know or read something about, if you wash it more than 4 or 5 times, you wash out the active ingredient. Well, who the hell wants to drink salt and lye?
Right.
So just from a common sense standpoint, I started washing it 35 times. It takes 2 weeks. And that creates the most powerful Oramus that I've ever tasted. And the distilled water that's one of the ingredients is energized with Navapasanam, mm-hmm. which is Siddha alchemy that I got from the Mahasiddha Boganathar. I bought some in India, and then they started appearing to me in my pockets. And even some of my friends would find Navapassana beads in their home. And one of my friends called me and he says, "Did you put something in my home?" And I laughed and I said, "Well, I can't admit or deny. What was it?" And he said, "A Navapassana bead." I knew what happened. I said, "Listen, Richard, Mahasiddha Bogar really loves you. That's a gift for you from Siddha."
Right.
So the truth of your integrity is really part of how the flow of, I don't know, miracles and magic keeps happening. I mean, there wasn't even a tinge of desire to claim that it was me that put it there, right? I knew better.
Right.
It's really hilarious.
And, and maybe in some terms that, or we'll call it latter terms, it might have been said, how did it magically appear? But we know now through spirituality and metaphysics that these are synchronicities that are happening within our universe. And we are becoming more open or broad-minded in our perception to allow these experiences to come into our life. And it's no longer magic because we can prove it with modern day science and through quantum physics that these ideas are no longer the woo-woo factor. It's the way that the universe has always worked. And we are starting to understand all of this about synchronicity and energy and quantum physics and how they all are married together. So it's just a great story because there are so many things in this planet Earth that will start showing up more and more for people as they continue to walk their path of spirituality and self-discovery. And as they become more open-minded and open-hearted, these things that were considered magical will become mainstream. And, through many of the products that you've alchemized and that are on your website, and I've tried them. I've tried the oils and I've also tried the Ormus and have had great experiences with that. It just continues to unlock and open more of these doors to make them more mainstream in our life. So again, Ron, thank you for all of your travels and your insights and all of the time that you've spent, abroad traveling and gaining this knowledge and then bringing it back and making it available to all of us. It's really such a blessing because, we get to kind of take a piece of your experience when we are integrating with these products. And that kind of,
Exactly. That's what I know now as the quantum entanglement of love.
right. And, it's just such a wonderful thing that we are co-creating and co-participating in each other's experience. And it starts to remove the silo effect of, yes, we are an individual and we have this very specific frequency, but our energy is now entangled with others and we're getting pieces of their experience and understanding that on a whole new level of, sharing of what really sharing is. And we may not even be connected, physically, but we're still sharing these experiences and insights and energetic awakenings in such a profound way these days that, it brings us back to the two particle and the slit experiment that was, I think that took place in the early 80s or maybe the late 70s. I can't remember exactly when, but that, when one particle speaks to the other, the information is instantaneously transmitted, so they both are experiencing the same thing simultaneously. And that's becoming, more and more common into our awareness of what's happening. And it is the frequency of love. So it's a further broadening of that definition.
Yeah, it's really, really, really beautiful. And most recently, I have become very close with a quantum physicist right here in the West Coast. And the opportunities to um, embody the quantum interactive um, energy from hundreds of people in this pilot project that I've been blessed to conduct. Is actually part of my education to sometime this year open a quantum rejuvenation spa in Mount Shasta. And I got this water that is infused with quantum frequencies of, I would say, the Holy Spirit. And when I drink this water, it goes into my body and interacts with the water that's in my body. And we're 60 to 70% water in the first place. And we know from Dr. Emoto's experience that the way we speak to water changes the way the water looks when it's examined under a microscope. And what do you think the water looks like in your body from all of the self-talk and all of the indoctrination and how you felt and thought about everything that was you were told is the reality of who you are, how you're thinking, whether you're right or wrong, whether you get an A or an F, and how you feel about all of that is a frequency in the water in your body. So this quantumly infused water, I experience it, and I'd love to hear some of your experience, Glenn, is that it goes in and it interacts with the water in my body, and it reminds the water in my body of its original blueprint that starts loosening the habituated unconscious frequencies that have been operating in the background of my present reality.
Absolutely. We forget that, water is highly programmable, and that, with this quantum water re-energizing, reigniting the blueprint within us, that authentic piece and part that brings us back to oneness, I would like to say. And for me, my personal experiences with the quantum water have been very profound. That it doesn't take the consumption of large amounts of this water. And my first initial experience with the water was to just sit with it in its state in the bottle. And immediately as it came into my frequency, that I felt my frequency was uplifted, which I found fascinating. I didn't even have to ingest the water in order for it to have a positive reaction with the water that's already existing in my body. It's like, those two magnetics, when they become attracted to each other, that it amplifies the magnetic force. And I'm using that as an analogy, but that is kind of what I feel just by holding the water. And then when I took a small amount of the water, that it feels as if it is dipping into the chakras, and we could call them energy plexuses or nerve plexuses. And as that frequency hits, it's igniting the chakra points, and then it brings up that latent, resonant, positive energy that just is what I would call enlightenment. And it just changes your emotional state to heighten from from maybe neutrality for me to more of like a joyful or blissful state that has a very dynamic undertone of peace to it. And it's just such a wonderful experience because, before we started this today, I was telling you off camera that, I started this today with the Q water that you had just sent me. And this is the second time that I've had this experience with this particular Q water, this being the latest edition or iteration of this frequency water. And it still has that lasting effect. I mean, look at my face, I'm glowing.
You are. You are, and it looks like you are so excited to me. Your inner glow looks like a volcano of love and joy that is just percolating up from your belly all the way up through your heart to your throat to your face. It's really, really beautiful.
Oh, thank you for that, Ron. And that is a very good explanation of how I feel by and just first sitting with the water, being grateful for it, allowing it to start to resonate with me. It's not like, ooh, I gotta jump in and take some of this water. It's that acclimation period of like you start to meet somebody new and you want to have a conversation with them first before you maybe talk about something that might be a little bit more intimate. So that's how I experience the water. And then, that initial, it's almost what I would call like flowering, right? As a flower, starts to bloom and blossom, it gives me that similar experience when I ingest that. And that's energy. And that's, like, I want to say it's the igniting of the energy that already exists within me. It just gives it more intensity. And it's all heart energy. Like you said, it's all heart energy.
It is. And the flowering of a flower starts in a seed. And for me, that equates to the sleeping DNA. And, the DNA is anything but junk. It's just unknown to modern science, or it's being kept quiet, or whatever it is. But as we start flowering, that DNA starts coming online in all ways. So I know that I want to have fun in my life. I know that I want to love. And I mean, it's just been incredible everywhere I go. Yesterday, I went to mail some water to somebody at the local post office here in Mount Shasta. And it was a guy, I didn't know him, struggling to open up some tape to tape his package. And I've been packaging, 5 or 6 or 7 boxes of Q water a day to send out all over the world. So I stopped and I said, listen, let me see that. So he hands it to me and I fooled with it. And it was so old, it just would not unravel. Mm-hmm. So we were laughing and, we just connected. And I find my ability to interact heart to heart with people in all sorts of different kinds of circumstances is, it's almost as joyful as making love. I mean, it really cracks me up how beautiful the blossoming of an experience of life can become. And I believe that this is only the tip of an iceberg.
Right. This is just showing us when we're living from our most authentic state, that even what we may deem as the smallest, most insignificant experience really brings us an expansion of love and joy in ways that we never had expected before. So, we need to keep cultivating this, energy. And I like to say it's, dropping the stone into the water and allowing the ripple effect to continue to go wherever it needs to go. We never know who it's going to touch and how it's going to affect, or how the next 4 ripples will affect the next 10 people down the river or the pond. We need to keep that collective energy going. And I feel that finally we're in that spot. We're in that sweet spot right now. As chaotic as the world may seem right now, we're in that sweet spot. And this is where we can make the biggest difference. And, this Q water is really going to help people, become more of that authentic person in the trueness and love. And there's that that glowing Mount Shasta behind you. Oh, I love that. She's my favorite. She's got a lot of love. That's for sure.
It's really, really special to be chatting with you and to be here in Mount Shasta. And, it's just so true, Glenn. And, as we continue to take delivery on, our inner and stay in the depth of love and of surrender, the blossoming just continues.
That's right. And it doesn't have to be, intimacy, and it doesn't have to be that ooey gooey love, right? That, I've got to give you a hug all the time, which is nice. And, for some people that may not be welcoming, but to live from the heart center, to live from that authenticity, to have compassion and patience and tolerance and appreciation are all part of that bandwidth frequency of love. So we can experience love in many different slices, yet it is still of that same wholeness of frequency. And that's, when we are all operating from that frequency, we will start to see dramatic changes in our physical reality.
Yeah, one of the people that are on the pilot project has reported to me that pain, level 9 for the last 10 years, when he drank the water, dropped to 2 immediately. And, that was his experience. That isn't everybody's experience. Everybody has their own experience based upon what their situation, their karma, their past, their belief systems, their childhood, whatever. And, excuse me, it's so interesting, the unfolding. And I think what we've been talking about, which is, noticing how we separate ourselves. I mean, we are apparently individualized, and we're simultaneously the one.
Mm-hmm.
So how we wrap our head around that individualized experience and that oneness simultaneously is a most interesting dance.
Right. And that's all about growth. And as a human species, we're starting to understand how to do that dance in a very elegant way. We know how to do it in the harmful, hurtful way. But now I think we're bringing grace into humanity and into the world. And kind of to segue into that, I want to talk a little bit about building community and how you have created this just simply amazing retreat center in Mount Shasta. Obviously, you're there right now with that beautiful backdrop of Mount Shasta herself. And can you talk a little bit about all of the wonderful things that you've created for people if they want to experience some time specifically with you and learning from you, or if they would like to maybe host a experience at the retreat center that you have?
Sure. Thank you. It was my second wife, my second soulmate, who passed in 2022 from COVID, that loved Mount Shasta. And, happy wife, happy life. You know how that works. So I brought her to Mount Shasta a couple times, and on the third trip, we walked into this house, and I looked at the mountain, and something just ignited in me. And 20 minutes later, I bought the house. And it's 5 acres. The house sleeps, I don't know, 12 people, depending on if there's couples or not. There's a couple of bedrooms with king beds, and there's a loft that sleeps 4, and there's another, and so that goes on in the house. And then there's a big deck with a red light sauna and a jacuzzi and weights, and it's 1,700 square foot, the deck alone that I built. And during the winter when it snows, I moved most of that into the temple. And the temple was a 2,000 square foot garage that I got permits for and built out into a teaching meditation temple. And it's just really, really beautiful. It's all carpeted, and the garage doors, windows were put in, and there's a 2-sided fireplace into the waiting room and 2 massage or treatment rooms. And it's filled with crystals and geodes. I've been into crystals and geodes, God, for 30 years. And I just love the energy of crystals. And so I haven't really developed the land to the extent that it will be at some point. There's some landscaping that's done in and around the house and the temple. Depending on who it is and what they want to teach, I do occasionally rent out the property to people that want to host events here. If people want to do plant ceremonies, they need to do that somewhere else. I did all that in the 60s, but now, that's a energy and a frequency that I know some people need to experience. And I also see an awful lot of addiction to that, as if that is something that needs to be repeated. So from my experiences in the 60s of peyote and mescal and, acid and everything else, intentionally, I can activate those neural pathways anytime I want. And that's what I support. So other types of teachings that people want to do, whether it's yoga or, self-healing. I also have a dark room that I've spent 19 days in. It's pretty much soundproof. You can hear the train going through town if you really listen at night. And there's 4 bunk beds in there and 1 queen bed. So that can sleep 9 or 10 people also. So for retreats, up to like 20, 22 people could be accommodated with different levels of sleeping accommodations, maybe with different levels of the exchange of energy for coming to a retreat. Really nice kitchen in the main house. And, it's pretty quiet here at night. There's just no light. It's just the sky and the stars and the mountain. It's Mount Shasta. The elevation here is about 3,600 feet. And during the winter, sometimes I get as much as 5 feet of snow. And it's pretty nice, pretty quiet.
Shasta is a beautiful place. And, one of the great things that people might not know is you don't necessarily have to be directly on the mountain to receive her mountain energy, because her mountain energy is spread out through a grid work. And pretty much just about anywhere you are in Shasta, you're taking advantage of that specific Shasta mountain energy. And, you're probably one of the closest that could get to the mountain itself, because there are so many protected properties that are governmentally regulated that you can't build homes. But Ron is super, super close to that mountain, and it's such a wonderful experience to be in that energy, and also with all of the wonderful energies that SiddaRon has put into this retreat place and his home, between the crystals and just all of the specific loving energies that you exude. Everything is infused with that heartwarming love. So, I can't wait to do something there. And, my good friend Emery Smith and I have been kind of tweeting back and forth of what we're going to do. And hopefully we're going to bring something, to you, hopefully this year. We'll see how all of those plans are going to shake out. We're just all so busy, but we've got something that's on the back burner for us that we're looking forward to possibly bringing to Shasta. So, Ron, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with today? We've talked about a plethora of different subjects. I'll make sure that we put your website on the end of this trailer so people know how to get in touch with you. And it's Anu, ANU, alchemy.com. And you could visit Ron's site, and there's so much information about Ron and also about his products. Ron, what would you like to leave us with today?
Well, anybody that's going to be at the Conscious Life Expo in LA, I'll have a booth there, and not only will I have the new Alchemy products, I am going to bring 4-ounce bottles of the quantum water that I'll be giving to anybody that requests it. And I'll be giving a talk Saturday, I think around 4 o'clock, about the the Siddha alchemy, and I'll talk a little bit about the quantum water too. And if anybody is extremely moved to really want the quantum water, and you contact me, I will ship it to you free. I ask for you to return the cost of the postage, which I use a flat rate USPS box that's $20 to send anywhere in the U.S. So I'll be doing that at least in the near future. It's part of my education to give, and then the exchange for the water is a daily report of how the water is interacting with your mind, your ego, your consciousness, your physicality. And sometimes we have a discussion about that and about the stuff we talked about today, Glenn. And this is my education. When I get a report from somebody, I actually, in the quantum field, experience what they're experiencing. And this is, I think, what you and I have discovered also, both before we start doing this podcast and during the podcast, when I felt your enthusiasm and your heart. I mean, I know where that is in me too. And that is, we are one, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Ron, thank you again. I have so much appreciation for you and love for you, and I look forward to when we get another opportunity to physically be in each other's presence and talk again and have something, and hopefully we'll be together again sometime this summer. I look forward to it. Ron, thank you for your time. I love you, brother.
Love you too. God bless you, and God bless us all.
Thank you.
All right.
Folks, we've had another amazing podcast. We invite you to be with us once again on another amazing podcast of the Ascension Stargate Podcast Series. Look for us on our next episode. Thank you.